Hi there, this is Mr. Little once again, Spanish 1, and today we're going to talk about pronunciation and punctuation. I know that probably not like the hot topic at the dinner table, but we'll make it kind of interesting. So what you need to know is how to be able to make the sounds that Spanish makes, because they are a little bit different than in English. Some letters produce very different sounds, but most of them are almost the same as English. But something you might not have thought about is what makes the sounds to start with. And that's where we talk about vowels and consonants. So I know that in school before you've learned these words. A vowel is A, E, I, O, or U. And a consonant is every other letter. That is still true. But what is a vowel really when we speak? And what is a consonant? Basically, the vowel is your ability to make noise from your vocal cords. That's this part right here. As I'm talking, I can feel it vibrating, right? And when I stop talking, it doesn't vibrate anymore. So anytime I'm using a vowel, I'm sort of pushing air through my vocal cords. A consonant is anytime I'm not pushing air through my vocal cords, but instead I'm using like a modifier, like I'm changing the vowel. So for example, the letter P. You don't feel the vibration. But when I say the letter O, I can hear it. I can feel it right here. And so, like for example, a CH sound, ch, ch, ch. I have to breathe out, but my vocal cords don't vibrate. In order for me to make noise that is meaningful, I have to combine vowels with consonants. Vowels and consonants are going to be, again, somewhat similar between English and Spanish, but sometimes they'll be pretty different. So one example is the letter M, like in money or man. I put my lips together like that, M, just like in English, Spanish. Now, Spanish will make it quicker, sharper sometimes, but it's the exact same movement. But one letter is a little different. It sounds very similar, looks similar, and you're going to start pronouncing it similarly. That's okay, but I want you to get to the point where you get it a little different. That is the letter D, as in dog. In English, when I say a D sound, I'm going to put the tongue behind the teeth. Dog, dog. But in Spanish, the tongue is going to come out just a little bit, like the word dia, dia, D-I-A, dia, like buenos dias. So it's almost the same, but it's a little different. And so as we study Spanish, what I want you to do is I want you to trust your ear and listen for those little differences and try to repeat them. You don't have to put a whole lot of like brain power behind it because your ears and your brain are built to communicate. Just try. Listen to a native speaker or someone who speaks Spanish really well. Like in our textbook activities, they have all native speakers. When you hear them make a word, like say a word, try to make it sound like they do. Try a few times. Again, we're doing distance learning, so it's not like anyone's going to make fun of you, right? But trust your brain is going to be able to copy or to mimic those sounds really well. And I'm looking forward to hearing you all as you do your presentations throughout the year and how good you can develop some of these sounds. There are some letters that are very different, like in the word Mexico, which is spelled with an X. The X makes like an H sound. Mexico. But in the word excelente, excellent, excelente, it makes like an X in English. English doesn't follow a lot of its own rules anyway with sounds. So we'll actually find that Spanish is a lot easier to pronounce than English. You will have very little trouble with it. Now, let's go to punctuation. Punctuation. What is punctuation? And that is, what does this word mean? Well, punctuation is basically the written marks that clarify writing to reflect the timing and tone of language. So for example, when you hear me talk, I make pauses to clarify, like to communicate. I pause so that you have a second to think. Or I might hesitate in order to make something sound more important, or to list it as a series of options. Sometimes I get really excited. Other times, I don't know what I want. What do you want to do? Punctuation allows us to communicate things that maybe the words don't change, but the way that we're saying it changes. And that way, when you read it, you can hear it or know it. Spanish punctuation is very similar to English. So you know what periods are, commas, hyphens, the quotation marks. Most punctuation operates the same. However, there are 3 marks I want to talk about today that are a little different, that we don't use at all in English. They're pretty straightforward. I think you'll understand. So the first one is an inverted question mark. Inverted is a fancy word for meaning upside down or turned around. Okay? So in this case, we have the question, ¿De dónde eres? This is a question. Where are you from? And you see a question mark at the end, just like you would normally expect in English. But in Spanish, we have this one that is upside down or inverted. It's at the start of the question. It's at the place where I began asking the question. So make sure when you write questions that you put an upside down or an inverted question mark at the beginning of the question. Another one we have is the inverted exclamation point. Same thing. Whenever we're going to use an exclamation point to show that we're excited or that there's like high energy in the situation, we're going to begin with one that is upside down. And not doing so would be problematic in Spanish because we sort of need that. It makes more sense. If you're using a phone, typically you hold down the button for a question mark and hesitate a second, and then the inverted question mark becomes an option. Same with exclamation point. If you're using a computer, you can insert symbol like in Microsoft Word, and you'll find these marks there as well. Otherwise, you can copy and paste from other text if you need to reproduce them. There are also shortcuts in keyboarding, but if you want those, email me or Ms. Lopez and we'll get those to you. So, finally, the one that's going to be more problematic, you're going to have to do a little more studying on, is the accent mark. And accent marks are very important in Spanish. They have 2 main functions. Either they tell you where the emphasis is on the syllable, or the emphasis on the syllable. They sort of indicate it for you so that you don't sound like I just did. Or an accent mark changes the meaning. So it's kind of important to get it right. So here's, in this question, ¿De dónde eres? In this case, ¿dónde means where? We put an accent mark on it because it's a question. Whenever it's used as not a question, we don't use it. So it changes the meaning somewhat. Here's another example of a word you do know, that you already know in Spanish. Sí, or yes. If I don't put an accent mark on it, the word changes. It becomes the word if, like if. If you go to the store, I'll need some Diet Coke. So the meaning changes completely by carrying the accent mark. So accent marks will be important for you to learn as you do your vocabulary. So whenever we assign a list for you, I want you to learn where those accent marks are going. You will only ever find an accent mark over a vowel because you can't put spoken emphasis on a consonant because a consonant doesn't produce any sound in the vocal cords. So an accent mark will only ever be over an A, E, I, O, or U. Well, that's what we need to know about punctuation and pronunciation for now. In the future, we'll talk a little bit more about specific letters, and we'll get into a couple other punctuation marks that are a little different in Spanish. And then we'll get into where we place emphasis on words. We'll do those in future lessons. See you then.